All right, hello everybody, this is Swiss. Today I'm going to show you my proposal that I submitted for the very first time. And let's get into it after the intro. All right, so guys, this is the proposal here. It's just another variation on how to actually treat minting of wearables going forward. We actually do have a good proposal here in place. I have casted my vote for other, and I think I have explained my point of view on multiple occasions. I think, I do totally understand, and initially actually did vote for the 500 mana option. But once I realized here that that would mean that a legendary item would essentially cost 5 mana to mint, I realized this is not something that I can stand behind just like that. So I was thinking, okay, so if I don't agree with the proposed option, what would I propose? Because one thing is criticizing others, commenting on others' suggestions, which is a valid activity. I do it as well, but it is also valuable from time to time to put yourself out there and try to formulate something on your own. And it is difficult. And I did try to put something together based on the ideas that I had. And I think it is a very reasonable proposal. And I must say that I noticed it's sometimes not that easy to read through someone else's proposal, especially if it's, long format. There is 3,500 letters here, so it's quite a read. So I decided to just quickly explain it. And I think I've received a couple of questions that surprised me, where people didn't pick up on a couple of important details that I thought were kind of straightforward. But I also realized that maybe I haven't formulated every single component of the idea, and maybe some information may be missing. So let's quickly run through this. So basically, this proposal consists of 3 components: component 1, component 2, and component 3. And the voting is really on 2 options: the combination of component 1 and 3, which is the absolute minimum, or the combination including option 2, component 2. Or you can say you just don't like the whole thing. Now, the thing is, if you don't like the whole thing just based on the numbers that I proposed, but you find the whole mechanics of the proposal interesting, it's of course tricky how to vote here. And if you could leave me a comment somewhere on the forum, this would be helpful, because maybe we can just, work with the numbers if the mechanics are suitable for you. So here is the deal. Basically, there are 2 different distinct opinions that are on the extremes of the spectrum, right? There is the people who would like to mint wearables for free. They want to have an idea and they want to use the tools available to create wearables and make those wearables available for free to the whole community. Now, the thing is, after lengthy conversations with a lot of people yesterday, I realized that there is an overhead for the foundation to administer, run, and host and accommodate for a newly created asset inside Decentraland. So there is an overhead, there is a specific cost that needs to be covered in order for one new wearable to be properly treated. And this, of course, includes the whole process of checking a newly submitted file for errors, for copyright issues, and so forth. So there is an overhead that needs to be paid. So it cannot be completely free, right? So if you want to mint 100 legendary NFTs based on their initial proposal, you would pay 500 mana. So that would mean 5 mana per NFT minted. And that money would be used to kind of finance the whole administrative component of it. Now, so basically, free means free, but plus that administrative cost. So we need to take this into account, but I call that free because, whether this is 100 or 500 mana, if you're minting more than one item, it is literally free if you compare it what the market has been doing over the past 12 months. We've been buying wearables at incredibly high prices with very high Ethereum fees, which were way, way more than any of these, theoretical figures proposed now. So I would say this is the free option. And then there is option B. This is a completely different point of view from guys who actually bought into the NFT wearable asset class. They consider that they haven't just bought clothing items for their avatar. They think that they have invested into the platform, and they could have bought mana, they could have bought land, and they could have bought wearables. They, included wearables into that mix. And now we are, proposing to literally dilute that whole asset class by allowing people to add to that pool almost for free. And they do not necessarily like this proposal. So there's these two opposite sides. And the question is, how do you reconcile both of these points of views to still make it work for the majority of players in Decentraland? And I was looking for a solution, and my proposal is really about how to reconcile both interests. And it's not that easy because, let's see what the three different components of the proposal really are, and then we'll see where the complexities are. And I think the key complexity here is that it's not going to be extremely cheap or almost free in any scenario. And I think people who have voted no until now, those three people, if you look at their accounts, they do not hold any wearables today. So obviously they do not care. What they care about is that going forward, they can create stuff as cheaply as possible. And I get it. I mean, I'm about to mint a collection of wearables, and if I look back at my proposal here, I realize that I'm getting myself into some serious expenses if I want to do this right. And by right, I mean more than one item. I mean, like, one thing is if you mint something for yourself, for personal use, you want to be creative, you want to look fun, you want to participate in some competition, you want to create one item for yourself. So this is the fundamental, the most basic use case, right? And this kind of launches us into component number one. Because actually we have introduced a new rarity category. And what is a rarity category? And maybe this is a term that is not fully understood by everyone, but this is the term I use. A rarity category is a class, a category of items, and how many of NFTs per item can exist for that category. So something that we call legendary can exist 100 times. There are 100 copies potentially of that item in Decentraland. Something that has the status mythic, this can exist 10 times inside Decentraland. I mean, the same item can be available 10 times. So these are the different categories. And now we have introduced a new rarity category that is called unique, where only one single item can exist in Decentraland. And this has really been only used like for 2 or 3 people who have been in a special standing with the Decentraland Foundation. They have received a unique item. So this was really an unused category until now, but now we can actually use it for this particular purpose. And I was thinking, all right, so why don't we allow people who would like to be creative to mint that new unique rarity category, right? Because there is no resale intent. Like, if you want to create wearables for your personal use, you don't need to mint 1,000 different items. You don't need to mint 100 different items, because if you want to mint more, your intention is to sell to make a profit. So if you want to make a business out of it, I think you can also be expected to put up a little bit of an investment into this whole thing if you expect to make massive profits from it. But minting something for free, 1,000 items, trying to sell those at an elevated price, competing with existing inventory from people who have invested early on in the game, it's an option, but a lot of people believe this is not healthy for the ecosystem, and they're just not happy being diluted all of the sudden, pretty much unexpectedly. So component number one suggests, why don't we allow for people to mint one unique item that they can use themselves? They can, of course, sell it, but then they will not have a copy of it by themselves. So, there is no incentive to throw it onto the marketplace. There's an incentive to keep it. And this would be possible for 500 mana, which is kind of the minimum number that has been thrown around until now in all of the proposals. It is a significant investment, but you will own a very cool item that you have created for yourself, and it will be a unique item. It will have value, and you can own it, and it will cost you 500 to mint. Yes, of course, if you want to create just a simple copy of a pullover of with a different logo, you will probably not spend 500 mana to create one single item like that. And I understand that. So it does work for someone like me, for example, who will create a tuxedo, like a high quality item that I spend significant time and money on developing. And if I want to mint one single piece for myself, I would pay the 500 mana. And I'm sure if at some point I'm willing to sell it, I will find a buyer who will pay a significant premium for this unique item. But it doesn't work for everyone. But this is one component that just by itself would be already a solution, not a solution that would work for everyone, but it would be a solution to use that rarity type unique. Let's continue. So component number 3, let's just touch on that first. So component number 3 says everyone can mint any kind of rarity type, mythic, legendary, epic. You can mint those, but it will cost you 5,000 mana, not 500 mana, to mint 10 mythic NFTs. Or 5,000 mana for 100 legendary NFTs, or for 1,000 epic NFTs. So what does that mean? Let's do the math. So if you mint 10 mythic NFTs for 5,000 mana, that means each NFT will cost you 500 mana. In the history of Decentraland, I only recall, and I mean, this is me thinking back in history, I only recall one sale of a mythic item at 600 USD. This was the cheapest that I have ever bought, and I've bought one at 1,000 USD, but never really cheaper. So these mythic NFTs, they have inherently quite a lot of value, and you will never find them really, really cheap. And the most expensive ones are listed for 50, 60, 100,000, and sales numbers were definitely, I've bought mythics at 10K, I've bought mythics at 5,000, and I've sold many at 5,000. There is definitely an elevated premium for owning a mythic. It's a special item, it's rare, there are not that many out there. So if you get to create one and design one for 500 mana, you have a lot of upside profit potential if you want to make a collection that is designed to be desirable by the community, right? If you want to put effort into it, if you want to create a project around that, if you want to advertise it, if you want to brand it, if you want to make something special, you will want to choose that particular rarity type mythic, and you will have to invest 5,000 mana to launch that business project. So I think from that perspective, it makes sense. Now, let's talk about legendary. I think most people would probably tend to pick the legendary NFT type if they would like to launch a real project in Decentraland. And there, each item would cost 50 mana, 5,000 mana divided by 100. 50 mana. I mean, 50 mana is really very little money. You cannot buy anything for 50 mana. You cannot even register a name for 50 mana. So you will own a legendary item, a limited edition of 100 items in Decentraland. Until now, this was the second most rare rarity type for 50 mana. It's almost it's almost funny, but in the previous proposal it was 5 mana, which is actually ridiculous. At 50 mana it's still funny, but at least it kind of starts to make sense, even if you subtract all the hype around NFTs, 50 mana still sounds like it's reasonable. And of course, if you speak about the epic rarity type, this would bring it back to 5 mana again, but 1,000 epic items. That is, this is more for a commercial customer who would like to distribute, branded stuff to the wider community. This is not for the regular kind of dude creating a project, I imagine, at this point in time. So it feels like 5,000 mana is a lot, and frankly speaking, I'm not sure I would come up with 5,000 mana for my Tuxedo project. Although I probably would, but I would think twice about if I should pick the mythic or the legendary type. But that's the whole point here, right? The whole point is to keep these items valuable. Whether you create them, whether you buy one, you want those to have a barrier to entry. You want to make it difficult and expensive to create. So when you own one, when you get to buy one early on, that you have something special. So I think this is the idea behind introducing a bit of a barrier to entry through higher prices. So this is component number 3. Anyone can create any kind of rarity, but there is a minimum threshold to enter the game. So for the most part, if you combine component 1 and component 3, Decentraland would continue the function how it functions today. Yes, there is a certain illiquidity, and yes, there is a number of people who are priced out of this action. And I realized that maybe this is not a very good experience for a significant amount of people. So there should be another possibility to resolve that issue. There should be a possibility to create items for free or almost for free. And this is the component 2. And this component 2 is also the distinction between the choices that you have. So if you really do not necessarily care about creating your own wearables, but you would like to make sure that the wearables that you already own or the wearables that you are going to buy are going to be rare and will maintain their value over time, you probably are quite happy with option 1 plus 3. I must admit, I am for option 1 plus 3, but only because the component number 2 is not that easy to implement in the short term. I think, I'm not sure about this, because what is the component number 2? Well, basically, if you want to create items for yourself and your smaller community, you don't need to mint 1,000 items, and you don't need to mint 100 items. I mean, 100 NFTs in your wallet, that is a lot. Very few people have 100 Decentraland NFTs in their wallet. Like I have with this character here 115 different wearables. So if you come in and you have 100 different wearables in there or 100 different NFTs, That is a lot. So if you're creating a wearable for you and your friends, you're not going to use the legendary category. So what are you going to use? Most likely you would be interested in using the mythic. By mythic, I mean 10 NFTs for your item, 10 copies of your item. And the thing is, the category mythic with the 10 items currently is historically been the most expensive, the most exclusive category. That means these items sold for the highest prices, and people invested into these items thinking that this is the safest bet if you want to invest into this asset class. And now we would come in and we would say, hey, for 50 mana, you can create as many of these mythics, quote unquote, new mythics on the L2 network as much as you want, like anyone, right? So that wouldn't work. We couldn't categorize the newly minted items for 50 mana into the same category like the most expensive items if we don't want to alienate people who have concern B. And if we are in the business of trying to reconcile both communities here, what would be another solution? So component 2 says, why don't we create an additional category, a rarity category, like we did for the unique. We introduced unique. Why don't we introduce another category called community or customs or whatever you want to call that particular new category? Let's say we call it just community. And the community rarity type would be very similar to the mythic rarity type. You can have 10 copies of your item, and it can cost you something to mint into that category. In this proposal, I just kept it at 500 because this seems to be like the number where everybody is somewhat comfortable with. It still covers all the administration costs, but it's very affordable if you can get 10 items, because then each item would be 50 mana, and I think that's a very reasonable cost. So in order to allow for people to mint and to create and to do whatever they want inside Decentraland, they could mint into this new rarity type community. We can have all the diversity we want. You can sell those items, give them away. They will be affordable. They will not dilute anyone who owns existing OG items, and everyone would be pretty happy. Of course, and this is why I have created an option without the component number 2, even though this would really be the solution to satisfy the category A here. It would introduce quite some work, because adding a new rarity category would mean that on OpenSea we would need to have a change that the current infrastructure would have to not only accommodate for the new unique category, but also for that new community category. And I'm not necessarily sure how much of additional overhead that would be and how much of development that would actually be. It probably is not a whole lot. It probably is just one additional category, but I do not know for sure. I mean, if you can add a unique category, you can probably add also another category. So this was the foundational idea. So yeah, I think this is kind of the proposal. I understand that it's not the most simple proposal, but it kind of introduces an additional way of thinking about the problem. And maybe we can take one or two ideas here and implement it into a subsequent proposal by somebody else. I've seen some very interesting proposals that take completely a different angle. Like, for example, someone is suggesting to highlight L1 or the original wearables visually inside Decentraland, so you wouldn't even have that conflict where, even though both items would be legendary or mythics, a newly created one and an old one. When you're wearing this item in world, the original old school items would be displayed with a specific effect that people would recognize that this is a different type of item. I think this is a very cool way of solving this problem from a completely different perspective. But there are different ideas out there, and I think all of these ideas are implementable. I hope this additional explanation added to your understanding and didn't complicate it further. Let's see how people react to it. I think it's great that we are taking this subject seriously and take it apart in more detail. All right, guys, this was Swiss. Do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Do cast your vote whether you like it or not. Add your comment, your positive comment in the forum. And please remember, guys, like, to sit down and write your ideas and think through your ideas. This is quite some work. And even if you don't necessarily feel like it's fully representing you, or if you don't feel like fully reading and understanding the proposal, be gentle in your comments and be fair. A lot of people sometimes feel like they need to express some kind of opinion inside these voting mechanisms, but this is not for me, this is for you. Like, if you don't like the proposal, that's perfectly fine. I'm quite happy with the original proposal. Anything works, because in the end of the day, I think some of the issues that we are trying to solve may actually turn out completely different, and we don't know how this is all going to play out. But we're just trying to anticipate, we're trying to do the right thing. And if there is two different groups that want two different things, maybe there is a way to have both groups win and not one or the other. In any case, this is it. I see you guys soon. Thank you for listening, and bye-bye.